A forest can be forbidding, a place of secrets, of danger, a place to hide. The Ardennes on the French-Belgian border offers perfect territory for a husband and wife team intent on murder. First, they prowl towns nearby. Then they disappear into the dark forest with their victims. One day, pregnant, the woman, Monique Olivier, sees a young girl, beckons her over.
She asks for this girl's help. She says, "I'm pregnant and I'm not feeling well. Can you help me? Can you come with me?"
A year later, the scene is repeated in another town. Monique Olivier's baby is now born, but that has not curbed the need to kill. The husband and wife team are back on the prowl. Another girl comes into view of Olivier and her husband, the killer, Michel Fourniret.
She'd have thought nothing of approaching the car. There was a man, a woman and a little child, so why would she be frightened?
None of the victims would have thought that they were being lured into a trap.
But the man in this picture is quite simply a monster, like few others. A child killer.
Will anyone notice? Will the little girl realize the danger she is in and run? Or is she about to become the latest to suffer at the hands of Michel Fourniret and Monique Olivier? Before the so-called French diabolical alliance kill again, can anyone get inside the mind of a serial killer? Isabelle Laville is just 17 as she returns from college. A car pulls up and a woman asks for directions to a fuel station.
We have to speculate precisely what happens that day, but there's enough to suggest that Isabelle is not suspicious. There is a man and a woman in the car, a couple who need her help.
Monique is actually central to Michel's ambitions. Very few women are going to get into a car of a strange man that they see.
She's very out of her comfort zone. Up until now, people have only ever been kind to her and wanted to help. Her parents, teachers, school friends.
Within seconds, she has been bundled into the back of the vehicle owned by Monique Olivier and Michel Fourniret. On being reported missing, police suspect she's been abducted by a French serial killer later identified as Émile Louis. They have his description, warning people to look out for him. He was operating in the same region where Isabelle has gone missing. But police are wrong. Émile Louis has not abducted Isabelle.
The French police were incredibly unlucky that they had another series of abductions and murders happening in the same region of France at the same time. That's unprecedented.
Isabelle will never be seen alive again. 19 years will pass before her body is found at the bottom of a well in a tiny French village near Auxerre. Isabelle had become the first victim of the Ogre of the Ardennes, Michel Fourniret, and his wife. Fourniret's crimes are amongst the worst France has ever suffered.
He's killed at least 8 young girls and women, but it's likely to be more.
Their crimes are beyond belief. It left the country wondering how it could have produced such monsters.
When Olivier has seduced the girls into trusting her, Fourniret attacks. He rapes, then kills. Some victims as young as 12 and 13, lured into a trap by the couple who exploit the innocence and goodwill of children.
I think Michel Fourniret and Monique Olivier played on the fact that children want to help. They want to be seen to be helping people, and young people want to be seen to be public-spirited.
We're socialized into trusting women more. We're socialized into believing what they say a lot more. So the fact that Monique is there and offering assistance or asking for help is key to Michel being able to enact the brutal rapes and murders that he does.
Fourniret and Olivier will carry out a series of murders over an 18-year period, using at times their own baby boy to put their victims at ease. They're a husband and wife murder team who left an entire nation in shock. Fourniret's perverted sexual behaviour begins in the 60s.
Michel Fourniret first comes to the attention of the police when he's about 24.
He's arrested for indecently assaulting a little girl. He's interviewed by a psychiatrist who concludes that he can be treated to prevent him offending again.
That psychiatrist couldn't have been more wrong.
Released after 6 years inside, a tawdry 20 years follow as Fourniret commits sex crime after sex crime. He's charged and convicted 13 times.
He is every woman's worst nightmare.
And he is a man who coldly calculates that he will need a woman by his side to commit the crimes that he's planning.
Michel Fourniret hatched upon their MO as a way of preventing being caught, because you've got to remember he was previously caught for offences when he acted on his own. So what we know about criminals, and particularly sex offenders, is they introduce learnt behaviour into the way in which they offend. And when you're caught in a particular way, often you try to prevent that happening again.
It is during and immediately after one of his extended stays in prison that the key cast of Fourniret's degenerate life story begins to assemble. It is a tale of a secret stash of buried gold, a gathering of unlikely partners in crime, a bitter wife who wants her first husband dead, and of the unwitting innocents that she would lure to their deaths. Fourniret's icebreaker, his means of creating the diabolical alliance with the gangster's mole that is Monique Olivier, is an advertisement.
He puts an ad in a newspaper saying, listen, I'm a prisoner, I'm lonely, I'm reaching out to any woman that wants a relationship with me. And lo and behold, he meets Monique Olivier.
Its words, when translated, read, a prisoner would like to exchange letters with a woman of any age so he can overcome loneliness. Monique seems drawn to men in jail. Her first husband was in prison, and now the man who would be her next husband.
For some women, it's a sense of low self-esteem. They feel that that's all they deserve. For others, it's a sense of danger.
I think there are particular types of people, in some cases women, that are attracted to men that are in prison. They're attracted to the danger that they represent and the risk that they represent.
Needless to say, the fact that this woman was so enticed by someone like this shows that there was things going on in her personality, in her emotional state, that were very lacking.
The relationship which follows is obsessive. Whilst Fourniret is in prison, the couple exchange intense letters.
These were passionate letters. She was infatuated.
So when the letters between them are found and analysed, they actually display a lot of passion, a lot of sexual passion, a lot of emotional connection.
She had been married twice before. In one relationship, she was physically abused, and in a letter from Fourniret, he makes Monique a promise about Mark, the abusive husband. I will make them atone for their crimes, he says. I also know that I will kill Mark. And he tells Olivier what he wants in return.
Monique is married to one of the men her husband knows from prison, and she hates him. So she enters into a pact with Fourniret. You kill my husband, and I'll owe you.
In return, Michel asks that Monique will help him find young women to abuse.
The couple agree to marry. The precise deal struck, in sickening detail, involves Monique helping entice virgins into Fourniret's grasp. Shortly after his release, they get together.
So he moves in with Monique, they marry, and they move to the Auxerre area of France. At this stage, Monique is still expecting Fourniret to fulfill his promise to kill her first husband. But Fourniret has other plans.
Those plans include abduction, rape, and murder. Shortly after arriving in the Auxerre region, the couple carry out the first murder of Isabelle Laville. Evidence would later emerge that when having sex, Monique would play the role of the little girl that she'd seen killed. She would act out what they had done.
They're both getting a sexual high off of this, off of the violence and the murder that they're enacting, and actually they're role-playing it later on in the privacy of their own bedroom.
This sort of couples in it together is not as uncommon as we would like to think. Bonnie and Clyde, Myra Hindley and Anne Brady, Fred and Rosemary West.
There's a sense of us against them, and this is very much is what's happening. Add into the mix the sexual element, the sexual high that they're getting, and the two of them are very much in a world of their own.
They seem to have all provided each other with some sort of evil reinforcement. Kept apart, they might never have killed.
The couple's next murder will come after an almost unbelievable yet true story of a hunt for buried treasure. When in prison, Fourniret had befriended a fellow prisoner, Jean-Pierre Elgouache. His wife is called Farida. She soon joins the cast of Fourniret's ugly story.
He had heard from Jean-Pierre that a fortune in gold coins had been stashed in a forest north of Paris. It was the proceeds of bank robberies. And he wondered if Farida knew where the stash might be.
Amongst her underworld friends is one of the bank robbers involved in burying the gold. Fourniret and Monique Olivier scheme their way into Farida's life.
An alliance was formed between the three, Fourniret and the two women. They would share the proceeds.
Fourniret sees this as a turning point because somewhere out there is buried treasure, life-changing money.
Farida is no more than a stooge, needed to help solve the mystery of the location of the gold, but for nothing more. She could have no idea that her life was in danger if the trio actually did track down the bullion.
They are partners in crime at this point. They have a shared cause to find this gold.
She can help him get rich quick. Farida is a means to an end.
He is utterly devoid of emotion in his crimes. One psychiatric examination concludes using that exact word. He is devoid, it says, of human feelings. Farida isn't an equal partner.
She and Fourniret spend days searching an area of the national park north of Paris. Will they find it? And what will Farida's fate be if they do? In the late 80s, the timeline of terror that Michel Fourniret and his wife Monique Olivier will unleash upon northern France and Belgium is in its infancy. They had killed once, but their minds were now on getting rich, quick. Together with Farida, they search near a graveyard in a wood near Paris.
Incredibly, Farida and Fourniret find the treasure.
She actually leads them to the gold.
What are the chances? But the moment the young woman and Fourniret find the gold coins, Fourniret's life does indeed change as he hoped it would.
But what's clear is that Michel Fourniret was intent from the beginning on keeping that for himself.
The gold discovered, the diabolical alliance have another victim in their sights. The recovered cache of ingots is hard to sell. 2 years pass before Fourniret and Farida find a buyer in Brussels. It's believed they raise 1.2 million francs, the equivalent of nearly £1 million today. Fourniret and Monique journey north and buy a castle, Chateau Sautou, near Charleville-Mézières, in the Ardennes region bordering Belgium.
If you were to pick a home which is also a hideout, somewhere where screams can't be heard, where you could come, you could go, you wouldn't be spotted, where you might even bury bodies, well, this was the place.
The couple are regularly in contact with Farida. They still have her share of the proceeds. A meeting is arranged, and the three drive into the Ardennes forest.
Up until the point when she's in the car, everything he said he's going to do, he has, as has his wife, which is probably giving her a sense of security. False sense of security, of course.
What happens next is disputed, but what investigators believe took place has been partially corroborated by the other woman in the car, Monique Olivier.
Monique blurted out in a courtroom one day that her husband had sat in the back seat of the car and he'd wrapped a shoelace around Farida's neck.
As he did so, a knife fell from his pocket.
Monique picks it up, hands it to Michel, and he proceeds to kill Farida.
Her body is abandoned by the couple and is still undiscovered. discarded somewhere in the desolate French forest of the Ardennes. Jean-Pierre Elgouache would eventually confront Fourniret about both the disappearance of the gold coins and his wife, but Fourniret escapes. Elgouache is soon back in prison for an unrelated offence, and Fourniret is back on the prowl, having blended into society.
Criminals like Fourniret don't carry a sign around their necks saying, "I am a sex attacker" or rapist.
The problem for police and for those who actually knew him is that he appeared normal.
He holds down a job as a handyman and electrician. He's quietly spoken. He's also giving nothing away. He has no friendships outside his marriage.
What made Fourniret into the man he became? Michel Fourniret claims to be tortured by a fact of his early life: abuse at the hands of his mother.
She sexually abused him, and he holds this up very quickly when he's confronted with the fact that he's a sexual abuser.
But is he telling the truth? Abuse by a mother is not unknown, but it's very rare.
What we do know about sex offenders is some often claim to have been sexually abused when they haven't, and statistically we know that it's not always the case that people that have been sexually abused as children go on to sexually abuse children as adults. So we should be quite sceptical about his claim that he was sexually abused by his mother.
When a child, Fourniret lives with a sister in modest surroundings, complaining that he could hear her using a bucket for a toilet and saying this was unbecoming for a woman. It is degrading, he says, and not living up to the image that he has of the perfect woman.
He becomes obsessed with the concept of woman as virgin, pure like the Holy Mary.
The misogyny that he holds for women is couched in this idea that no one can live up to the Virgin Mary, that there's this virgin ideal that no woman can aspire to.
He told investigators that his only regret in life was never having married a virgin.
He actually mentions the fact that he used to watch his sister soil in a bucket, as he calls it, basically in effect go to the bathroom in a bucket, and this revolted him, and this revolted him not just for the act, but the fact that a woman shouldn't do that. Somehow a woman should be beyond anything physical, almost anything human, and so begins his obsession with this idea of virginity and perfection in women.
No female is safe in the company of this man. He's obsessed with woman as sex object. And there's no respect at all with Fourniret, none. Just this sort of sense of entitlement that a female is his to use and abuse.
And those females that he most wants to abuse are the ones that Fourniret considers most pure.
The profile of his next victim will be the same as his first, a young woman, someone who Fourniret may consider is a virgin.
By now, Monique Olivier will do anything for Fourniret. He has still to keep his promise and murder her former husband. She does not object. He seems to completely control her life.
Well, there are very good examples of Michel Fourniret controlling the way Monique Olivier conducted herself when she was in his company. For example, there's a good example of them going to dinner parties and him not allowing her to speak unless he gave her the permission to.
But there is another reason that she appears willing to be consumed by Fourniret's murderous ambitions. She wants a father for her child. Now pregnant by Fourniret, she helps him abduct a young student called Fabienne Leroy.
The couple see a girl in a supermarket.
Monique, heavily pregnant, asks for help. Wonders if she could accompany her to a hospital. Points to her car.
A pregnancy is just another prop to be used to play the game that they've been playing, this awful, horrible, monstrous game.
Monique Olivier was able to entice and lure the young women into the car. She was the pacifier, but she was also the hook, the element that gave the woman a sense of trust.
Watching in the car at the supermarket, crouched behind the front seat, Michel Fourniret.
When she's in the car, we know that Fourniret will have subdued her quickly, either by tying a lace or rope around her neck, or by striking her hard enough for her to become instantly disoriented.
Fabien is caught completely off guard.
She's raped, then Fourniret shoots her dead. Her body is buried in nearby woods. Yet more evidence of a man who takes his satisfaction and then throws away a person as if she is no more than a discarded wrapping paper.
And throughout the incident, Monique Olivier watching and actually facilitating the girl's rape and murder.
Nobody hears a thing. Her disappearance from the supermarket car park goes unnoticed. No screams of protest, no signs of distress.
All of them went willingly, thinking they were helping people, thinking that they were being public-spirited. So I think it would have been a tremendous shock to them realise that they'd been duped into getting into the car and that they were in a very risky situation.
Months pass. The baby is born. Fourniret and Olivier appear a perfect couple starting a family. But Fourniret's appetite for abduction and rape show no signs of being satisfied. On a train between Paris and Charleville-Mézières, he sits a few feet from a young woman called Jean-Marie Desremaux. They chat. He tells her of his new family. Waiting for him at the station, Monique. Jean-Marie is not aware of any danger. As she travels on the train, glancing out of the window, she could not imagine the man that she was speaking with was a serial killer. Her journey is mundane. The man, no threat. Police have not been warning young women. There's no reason to. Nobody is searching for a male-female abduction team.
When you have a man and a woman that are involved in abductions, then that is a very difficult thing to investigate, because people don't see things that look normal. They don't see things that look like every day. And so they had a perfect cover.
Fourniret at this time is beyond suspicion. Detective work in the 80s is antiquated compared with today.
And it was a completely different time in terms of technology, in terms of politics, policing. So where the couple actually lived and their profile made their job much easier.
There was no internet, no instant messaging. Security cameras were very few. Policing was harder.
Fourniret continues to chat on the train with Jean-Marie. Talks of offering the young lady a lift home. Suggests that they will need a babysitter. Perhaps she would like to earn a little cash.
Fourniret's met at the station by Monique. What could appear more natural?
The young woman would have been completely unaware of the danger she is in.
So he's doing what many serial killers do. He's portraying a normal life while concurrently having this double life that's very dark.
Mums and dads don't attack girls. They care for them. They help them. That's her experience.
He's married. He has a child. He seems like your normal run-of-the-mill neighbor that you'd see. There's nothing that stands out about him.
What will happen to Jean-Marie Desremaux as she walks towards the vehicle with Fourniret and Olivier? Can she possibly imagine what is going on inside the mind of a serial killer? Jean-Marie Desremaux, a student, tells Fourniret and Olivier that she's expected by friends and asks for a meeting the following day. The couple agree. She can then come with them to see their home and meet the baby, spend some time getting used to him. The happy scene ends at the car park adjacent to the railway station. Before Jean-Marie leaves, it is Monique who makes one final suggestion.
And it's Monique that says, hey, would you like a lift home? Don't worry about it, we can take you.
Jean-Marie says no, but as she has promised, she returns the following day. She doesn't intend to stay long with the couple.
Having a couple offer you support, offer you help, ask for assistance, it feels more natural.
As she's driven along the long road approaching the chateau near Sedan in northern France, Jean-Marie is about to discover that the couple are far from what they seem. Fourniret suddenly stuns Jean-Marie with an amazing question. He wonders if she's a virgin. He will admit to the conversation when later questioned. The young woman, stunned, says she has a boyfriend and would now like to leave. Fourniret will not allow that.
The modus operandi of this couple suggests that Fourniret will quickly subdue his victim. He'll render her powerless.
He probably hits her as hard as he can and as quickly as he can. Then his pattern was to gag those that he attacked.
With Olivier watching, their new baby in his crib, Fourniret rapes the young woman before strangling her. They load her body into a freezer. Days later, they bury her in the grounds of the chateau. Student friends heard nothing from Jean-Marie for days. It's not like her, and they report her missing. Police launch a search. They begin to suspect that she may have become the latest victim of Émile Louis, the other serial killer on the loose in France at that time. He's usually struck, though, further south. Has he migrated north?
They were working as a couple later on with a child, and that didn't fit the stereotype of what the police would be looking for.
In the confusion created by the fact that France had different serial killers snatching girls and women from the streets, Fourniret and Olivier are free to attack again. And to further make it tough for French detectives, the couple leave the country. They move to Belgium, where, incredibly, another serial killer is soon on the loose. Marc Dutroux would later be convicted of killing 6 young girls in the same area that Fourniret and Olivier have moved to. The couple, now often travelling between the two countries, continue to look out for young women, possible virgins, who they can entice into their lives, use, abuse, and then discard.
I think that they shared experiences, those experiences of abducting and killing those women, that they both found sexually exciting and were both aroused by. And I think that, in its perverse way, cemented the bond between them.
In a town called Namur in Belgium, they spot a 12-year-old girl. Her name is Elisabeth Brichet. Fourniret and Olivier wait for 3 hours as she plays at a friend's house.
The evidence suggests that Fourniret and Olivier had planned this crime to the last detail.
For the couple, Elisabeth presents a new opportunity, and she's only 12.
Michel Fourniret and Monique Olivier were a couple acting in unison. They used their own child to present as an everyday couple and to make them above suspicion.
You can imagine little Elizabeth. Here's this poor little baby boy crying his eyes out, and the parents are from out of town.
The level of depravity that these two have in terms of how they try and entice girls is unbelievable. By this point, Monique's had a baby, a little 3-month-old baby, and she uses the baby to give young girls a sense of security to come with her. And this little girl, of course, feels safe. This is a woman with a baby who needs my help. Not only does she feel safe, she probably thinks she's doing the right thing. She's probably been raised to think this is the right thing to do.
Within moments of her coming across Olivier and Fourniret, she would have been asked into their vehicle.
As she sat in that car, Elizabeth would have had no sense of fear. I mean, why would she? This was her home. She was with a nice man, his wife, and their little baby. What was there to worry about?
The fate of Elisabeth Brichet was in the hands of a mother and father like no other. One, a serial killer, and the other, a woman who makes his actions possible. What happened to little Elizabeth after she was snatched by France's diabolical alliance, Fourniret and Olivier, confirmed the couple as one of the worst husband and wife killing teams the world has ever known. As ever, Fourniret insists that Olivier establish if his victim is a virgin, and then he strikes.
She was raped.
Not only was Monique not bothered by this, but perhaps was getting something from it as well.
In a slight change to their usual routine, Elizabeth is not immediately killed.
Did they offer her food or drink, or keep her bound and gagged? Did Monique console her? did she have a chance of being spared?
Fourniret's behaviour was remorseless. He showed no mercy.
All we know is that she was killed at the chateau.
We don't know how, and we don't know what the final thing was that made Fourniret act.
Perhaps fear that Elizabeth would be able to identify him.
Elizabeth's family had to wait 15 years for her body to be found. Her fate had been decided the second that she agreed to help a pregnant woman with a crying child.
He's a cold-hearted serial killer, and she is a monster who helps him.
Throughout this period, they used the grounds of the chateau as a burial ground. Elizabeth's remains were eventually discovered there. Belgian police, working to an early 90s set of investigative and communication standards, did not link what had happened to Elizabeth with what had taken place in France. They were in the dark about the missing 12-year-old.
They had nothing to go on, no descriptions, no immediately obvious pattern, and no bodies had been discovered.
We can be confident that they were not looking for a husband and wife team who kept a small baby with them.
Elizabeth had been snatched just before Christmas. It would be another 11 months before Fourniret and Olivier would strike again. They see a girl, Natasha, shopping with her mother. She separates for just a few moments, and Monique slows down in her van to ask for directions, feigns illness.
She asks for this girl's help. She says, "I'm not feeling well. Can you help me? Can you come with me?"
As Natasha shows concern, Fourniret snatches her and throws her in the back of the van. She is raped, strangled, and her body abandoned on a beach near Nantes. It is found 3 days later. This time, police believe they have their man, but they're wrong.
This case was complicated by the mistaken arrest of a neighbour, a man who was completely innocent of this crime, but who had linked up with a terrorist group.
He is innocent, but does his next action inadvertently cost the lives of more teenage girls?
He ended up killing himself in prison, so perhaps police thought he was the man.
If that was the view, it would explain why no wide-scale campaign was in action warning women of a serial killer on the loose. It is 1990, and the couple seem to have finished their series of murders. No other disappearances are reported in the Ardennes region until the year 2000. Out of the blue, Fourniret says he wants to go hunting for a virgin. Céline Saison, 18 and going home from school, is asked for help by Fourniret. He says he's lost, asks the girl to accompany him. Trusting him, she climbs into the vehicle. Fourniret immediately locks the doors, tells her that she should now allow him to have sex with him, or he'll throw acid in her face. She has no choice but to submit.
Of course, this child, like so many before her, is bound and raped and killed.
He pushes her to the floor of the van and strangles her using a rope. Later, he will return to the home that the couple are renting in Belgium.
Again, he crosses the border with Monique, disorienting police and aided by how easy it is to travel between the two countries.
When he gets back, he empties the contents of Celine's school bag on the family kitchen table, telling Monique, "I went hunting. I got satisfaction." As their son sleeps, the couple pick through Celine's holiday snaps from America. It was a trophy being paraded for his wife, a prosecuting lawyer would say in court.
Michel Fourniret is a man that has very little empathy, very little remorse. He lives his life the way he wants to live his life, and that's quite evident in the way he committed his offences, the fact that he took very little care in disposing of the bodies and left the bodies on property belonging to himself. That tells you an awful lot about his mindset. He was a man that was completely driven by his own needs and doing whatever he felt he could and wanted to do.
Fourniret's final victim would be a 13-year-old Asian French girl called Mananya Thumpong that he had stalked in his old hometown of Sedan. He persuades her to come with him in his vehicle and drives deep into the forest, where he rapes and kills her, burying her body nearby. Again, he returns home to Monique, trumpeting his satisfaction at finding another virgin. In 2003, the couple make the mistake which would finally bring an end to the series of murders. In a town called Ciney on the Franco-Belgian border, Fourniret, rather than Monique, approaches a 13-year-old girl called Marie.
He personally approaches her, and now this is unusual. He asks her for directions, and then he actually offers her a lift. When she says no, he tells her off for not being trusting enough. Mary tries to run, but he grabs her and throws her in the back of the van.
They grab this little girl, as they usually do. They bind her like they've always done, put her in the back of a van and start driving off.
This little girl pounds her feet against the back door until it releases and opens.
And eventually breaks open. She falls out of the van onto a road. Thank goodness another motorist sees her.
Fourniret and his wife double back.
Presumably to try and pick her up again.
But the diabolical alliance lose their nerve when their prey is something more than a defenseless young girl.
The young girl with the motorist are able to get the license plate, and eventually the two are caught.
That little girl so narrowly avoided being his latest victim.
She also kick-started the chain of events which lead to the arrest of the diabolical alliance.
The escape of his latest victim marked the beginning of the end. The Belgian police were given rapid assistance from the French about Fourniret's past, but it was far from over.
Fourniret gives nothing away. It is Monique, mindful of a recent case of a Belgian serial killer, Marc Dutroux, who cracks first. He had killed 6 times, and his wife was prosecuted as an accomplice and given a 30-year jail sentence. Monique became fearful that that would be her fate too.
By the time they're caught, it's very interesting because self-preservation kicks in for both of them. So Monique realizes that very recently another serial killer has been caught and his wife has been given life in prison because she knew about it. So she thinks this is going to be the case with me. So I need to tell them, you know what, it just wasn't just this one case of abduction. There's been a bunch more. So she gives him up right from the start.
As soon as he's locked up, as soon as he's arrested and charged, she feels that she's in a position to then speak. And I think, in all honesty, she realised that the game was up.
Eventually, Fourniret confesses to the murder of 8 girls and young women. The evidence was undoubtedly there to suggest he was their killer, but there are probably more victims to his name.
What of Monique? What does she claim? That she was a victim too. She'd only been following his orders.
I think it's very easy to suggest that Monique Olivier was acting under duress, but I think the facts suggest otherwise. And I think it's quite clear that she played an active part in the abductions and the subsequent murders of the victims, and that she has a deviant sexual interest in children in her own right.
She had so many chances to come clean with what happened, and she was such an integral part to what he was doing that I sincerely doubt that the disparity of power was to the extent that she's saying.
The court did not believe her claims. Meanwhile, Fourniret tried all in his power to remain in control.
His behaviour in court was telling. He refuses to go at first, and then when he's forced to, he shows absolutely no interest.
He had to be forced into the dock to listen to the evidence of abuse, rape, and murder. All the time, sitting with his arms folded defiantly, ignoring proceedings, arrogant.
Police are as certain as they can be that Fourniret has killed other young women. Monique Olivier even accused him of murdering the family au pair.
Sex offenders tend to be quite prolific in the way in which they offend. And traditionally when they're caught, they only tell you a small percentage of what they've done. So I think it's highly likely that there are other offences, other more serious offences, and potentially other murders that Michel Fourniret and Monique Olivier are responsible for.
But Fourniret won't give up any information, unless he feels he has no option.
It's quite clear that even after being arrested and spoken to by the police, Michel Fourniret wanted to maintain some control and really has only ever spoken about the offences which he clearly knows the police know about. And I think it's highly unlikely that he will speak about other crimes unless the police present him with some strong evidence.
For him it was a joke, and he still won't reveal the whereabouts of some of the bodies of who else he's killed.
He's toying with them, and he's getting that last sense of not just control, but I think being able to inflict pain on people by doing this.
Certainly psychologists are convinced that his arrest meant that lives were saved. More murders would have followed.
He actually admitted that he'd probably have killed again if he hadn't been arrested. Now, this is a serial killer who was caught before he could kill even more women. He'd be killing now if he was free.
In 2004, Michel Fourniret was sentenced to life in prison. Monique was given a life sentence with a minimum of 28 years before being considered for parole. The couple had snatched young girls over an 18-year period, using the opportunity of driving between jurisdictions and believing they would never be captured.
Sometimes you come across a case that's just so shocking that it makes you question whether it can possibly be true. And the case of this couple falls directly into that category.
The fact that he's sentenced to life imprisonment and will never be released should be a relief for everybody in France, but ultimately it should be a sign that everyone gets caught in the end. It's just a matter of time.